You're listening to episode 267 of the Comics Pals. We're a group of comic book journalists and friends who record a podcast together because we don't talk enough about comics in our daily lives.
So let's not. Oh, no, you got it. All right, go ahead.
No. Go for it.
I was going to say, let's not bury the lead, right? Normally, this is the part of the show where one of the chuckle fucks comes in and tries to make a joke. I don't feel like we need to do that. The main event is here. Christopher Sebela is back.
There you go. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, Christopher Sebela, the writer of, since the last time we've done this, the list has grown.
It really has.
But of course, Crowded, Volume 1, 2, 3, FOULBROOD, which is on Kickstarter now. We're going to be talking about that. I am so excited to talk about that. Short Order Crooks, which for those of you who are, long time listeners, you know that we're in that. The Comics Pals actually make an appearance in that, which is awesome. Just a whole host of books. Self, which is on Comixology. So many different books. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back. It's been a while.
Yeah. So I mentioned that you have a ton of books out. I can't wait to talk to you about Dirtbag Rapture in particular. I think I know I've been loving it. Pete just read it. He's been loving it. So we're going to dive into that. And we're going to talk to the people about how awesome the Kickstarter is for FOULBROOD in just a moment. Before we get into that, I do want to let you guys know how you can support the show and where you can find us. Of course, we are on all podcast hosting platforms. Leave us a follow, a rating, and a review wherever you listen to us. If that happens to be YouTube, like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 500 subscribers, so please hit that subscribe button. Help us out a little bit with that. Listen to our reviews for Image Comics every Wednesday, Thursday. For everything else, you can find that everywhere you can find this show right here. And of course, listen to our most recent book clubs. We just put out the Spider-Verse book club. Go give that a bump. Enough about us. We're over. Because for the rest of this conversation is all going to be about Chris. I don't even want to waste a moment before we get into FOULBROOD, because I want to say it was 3 or 4 years ago. You came on this show and you talked to us about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this right, a bee story that you had.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Yeah.
I've been talking about it for a while. So.
Yeah. And I remember being over the moon excited about it, but it was so, there were no details. It was just bee crime. Okay. And then it kind of started evolving. I remember Twitter posts where it's like, oh, the book's kind of coming together. I was like, oh, that's great. And now here we are, and it's on Kickstarter. It actually has artwork. It has a cover. It has covers, which are awesome. And we're gonna be showing you guys that. And of course, there will be a link to the Kickstarter project. It looks amazing. Talk to us about the process of this book coming together from inception, when you were talking about it on here and other places, and now to where people can get it.
Yeah, probably the last time I was on was when I was first just like rolling it around. I think I've been thinking about this since sometime in 2017, maybe 2018. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it all stems from an actual news story I read and followed for a while about this guy in California who got busted with all these stolen beehives. And it was, like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of bees. And the thing that really hooked me in the article was they interviewed one of the cops who discovered it, and he described the scene as like a chop shop of stolen beehives. And I was like, I was just hooked from that moment. I was like, that's such a good phrase. Like, so yeah, from there, I was just like, well, one, I didn't know anything about bees. Like, I don't like bees. Or I didn't. I've grown to like them. Yeah, like I didn't know anything about bees or beekeeping or any of that. So I kind of went down a tiny rabbit hole of figuring out how it all works, how you make money off of it. Like beekeepers rent out their hives to farmers all across the country to help improve the viability of their crops. Like they'll, rent several hives and then the bees will just go out, pollinate all their crops and then come back to the hive and then the beekeepers come back and pick up their hives and head back home with some money. So that was kind of the genesis. And then it was trying to figure out how to make it into an actual story instead of like, hey, this is a really cool idea. Which is most of my ideas are like, I get really excited about the idea. And then I'm like, oh, right. Now I have to actually like turn it into a real, like an actual narrative. So yeah, I was just like working on it for a while, and then I started working with a couple artists on it, and that didn't work out. Like it was just for several reasons. It was just, I think, bad scheduling, bad timing. So then I had to go back to step one, and Claire Rowe and I, who did Welcome Back together, I've been trying to get her on another book with me forever, basically since Welcome Back ended. And March of 2020, we were all set to start work on this book idea I had about a pandemic that kills like 100 million people. And
wow.
And I finally wrote her. I was like, hey, I don't think we should do this book anymore because there's an actual pandemic and I don't know how many people it's going to kill, but it's going to look like really bad taste if we proceed. So
we shelved that one for a while.
Yeah, possibly forever. I don't know. But I was like, but I have this bee thing. Would you? And I sent her the script and she was super into it. And yeah, then since then we've just been sort of slowly chipping away at it. And then I got Hank Jones for coloring to join up, and Hassan has been on board, I think, since the beginning. And our editor Jasmine Walls came on, and like we've got the first 2 issues done. Like we're working on issue 3 right now, so like whole team is super excited to like make this an actual real thing and finish it.
Yeah. It's so cool to see, artwork. If you look at the project page on Kickstarter, there are interiors that you can see. And again, if you've been listening to this for a while or you've been following Chris's career, then you've probably heard about this idea at some point. So it's always cool to see a creator that you're a fan of kind of put out a book that they've been talking about as a concept for some time. So first of all, I have to ask you, because I don't know anything about bees at all. And I'm just curious, in all your research, did you learn, is there really a bee crisis? Are we in danger of there being no more bees?
I mean, yeah. I don't know how dire it is. I mean, it is an actual concern. Colony collapse is a real thing, which affects a lot of, which is, like the big crisis. I mean, yeah, I think we're under siege from several angles, not just bees. So, but yeah, bees are part and parcel of it, and they're, I don't know enough to say like, yep, we're definitely in trouble. But yeah, I mean, like bee populations have been in decline due to a million different reasons, probably some to do with climate, a lot to do with, pesticides and pollution and stuff. And I don't know, like overcrowding, but yeah, it's a legit thing. And I sort of touch on it a little bit in the book as a source of concern for our main character, Jolene, who runs an apiary. And, it's like she's kind of got her back against the wall due to stuff like, having a colony collapse, which is like pretty devastating. It's just like having an entire population just wiped out. So, yeah, I mean, it's like it's a thing, but it's not it's not the central thing that I focused on. So I can only give you my half-assed opinion on that.
While we're on the subject of your kind of relationship to bees, I thought it was interesting you said earlier that you weren't a fan of bees, but now you feel like a bit of like a connection to them, I guess, from doing all this research. Like, what was it that I guess changed for you? Like, do you feel like it's just the amount of exposure and like digging that you've done into that world that has given you kind of like an affinity and a soft spot for it? Or was there like something in your research that like humanized bees for you or something like that?
No, I think it was just a general thing. Like, once you get sort of deep into it and seeing how bees work and how hives and colonies work, it's just a weird, fascinating process. I just didn't like bees because they were a threat. Like, I suppose they still are, but like I figure if I'm gonna write about them, like I need to like be at peace with them. So I just kind of came to a decision that like, yeah, I'm cool with bees. Like we don't have I don't have anything to really, I've been stung once in my life, so it's not like I have some like deep-seated bee trauma in my life. So yeah, we're cool. I'm tight with bees now.
No beef with the bees.
None whatsoever. Unless they mess with me.
So can I just DM you whenever I have a bee question? Are you just like, are you a bee aficionado now?
Oh, no, not at all.
No? Okay.
No.
All right. Fair enough.
So something I was really interested in about just, I guess, like the development of FOULBROOD is, as Sean kind of alluded to before, right? Like, you've put out so many books in the last couple of years, and you've worked with like a ton of different publishers, a lot of the more notable names in the business, right? But obviously you also have, Two-Headed Press, which is, kind of your personal imprint. And I'm interested, I guess, with that, how do you decide what's a Two-Headed Press book? Or I guess what made FOULBROOD a Two-Headed Press book rather than, something like Dirtbag Rapture, which, you've got out with Oni right now?
Right. I mean, mostly it's that, we did pitch it to a publisher and they passed on it, which I totally understand. Like, we're not I guess your typical comic. I don't know. We're making something a lot more slow burn, and it's very much a character study of these sort of 4 different groups of characters. There's not a huge action scene in every issue. I don't know. I think like Claire and I had talked about, there was another publisher who was interested in it, and Claire and I just kind of like talked to each other about it. And at that point, we'd already, we were already like deep in the issue 2. And I think it was just like a sense of pride and ownership with us that like, it's like, shit, we've done all this on our own so far. Like, and we didn't really want to like go with somebody who would be like, yep, we're going to take 50% of everything just for putting it out, which I understand, if they're paying, like they got to get something out of it. But I think it's just pride on our parts. Like, it's like we've just been quietly working on it. It belongs to us and we want to keep it. So we just kind of like tricked each other into doing a Kickstarter for all intents and purposes.
This isn't your first rodeo on Kickstarter.
No.
And we've talked to a bunch of creators, obviously, who do this and do it well and, have had success. What are the challenges of putting together a Kickstarter that is successful? This Kickstarter, of course, will absolutely be successful. As we sit today, we are at 13,706 pledged of a $15,000 goal with 421 backers. When we started recording this, it was at 420, which is a magical number for a variety of reasons. but we also have 7 days to go for you guys listening. That would make it 5 days to go, which means you need to go and support this Kickstarter. What are the challenges? What do you have to do to make a Kickstarter successful?
I wish I knew. I don't know. Like so far, all my Kickstarters have been like tiny little struggles. Like, we are definitely like a grower and not a shower. So, all my Kickstarter, the only Kickstarter I've had that's like blown the doors out immediately was the fucking Clown Motel one, which got funded in 4 hours and wasn't even like, it was a joke.
Can't get away from that thing.
But like all the serious Kickstarters I've done have just been like, a marathon, and it's like I just have to keep banging the drum for 30 days. I don't know. I haven't done one in a bit, so I'm kind of relearning the process. I think, I don't know. I think definitely like having something finished is very helpful, instead of like, hey, we want money to start working on this. Like it's less less confidence, I guess, from backers if you're like, oh, give us this money and then we'll start working on it and you'll see it in 6 months or something. So for us, like, we have the first 2 issues done, like ready to go. We just need money to pay the team and print it. So I think that's helpful. I don't know. I have no idea what makes a successful Kickstarter. I think just like having your shit together. I'm sure I'll have a better idea when I launch my next one. And I've had a chance to like sort of post-mortem this one.
Sure.
I'm kind of treating these as, now my approach is like treating it as an experiment, seeing what works, what doesn't. And then I can refine and adjust for the next one. And I don't know, maybe in like a year, I'll actually have a substantive answer to this. But for now, it's just like a mystery. Like, I'm just shocked that anybody's giving to us. Honestly, like, you put this up and then you're just like, please help, and you don't know what's gonna happen. So, it's all seems vaguely magical to me. Like, I don't have any control over it except for how much I talk about it.
It's funny, all of the times I've asked that question, all the advice, all the knowledge that people have imparted essentially boils down to having your shit together. So
yeah, I think that's step one in anything, really. But yeah, I mean, people are entrusting you with money and a certain amount of faith, and you just have to bust your ass to reward that. Like, and you can't, because if you burn someone, then they're just like, okay, well, I'm done with you. Like, I'm not gonna like back your shit. But if you can, I think for me, I'm trying to cultivate like a sort of new market for myself of like people who like my shit and want to read more of it. And there's only so many places, there's only so many comics publishers. I can't put all my stuff out through them. So I'm just trying to grow this little backyard venue where I can put out books that like don't really fit in regular comics.
So I was interested by the fact that this Kickstarter was specifically for issues 1 and 2, and I know you had mentioned that y'all are already working on number 3, and you mentioned the possibility of doing another Kickstarter within like the next year or so. Do you see that as something that you'd like to kind of continually make a part of your output, where you are doing more Kickstarter projects and doing more of like the self-funded, self-published stuff, rather than kind of going to the Onis and the Comixologies of the world?
No, I mean, I want to do both. Like I said, I have too many books I want to do, and it's like, even if a publisher's in love with you, like there's only so many slots they have to put books out. And I suppose this is all theoretical, but there's like a danger that you wind up competing against yourself. If you're putting out like, a book from, I don't know how true that is, but it's a theory I've been carrying around in my head, whether it's paranoid or real, I don't know. But yeah, I just want to like, I don't want to wait for permission from a publisher to go ahead and do a book. Like, if it's something that I'm confident in and that I believe in, and you know, I think there's an audience for it, then I'd much rather just like take it directly to them and be like, hey, like, you know, we need X amount of dollars to do this. Do you want to help? And yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to do it where it's not like a weird crisis for me. It's like launching this was like, I don't know, just a whole thing of like, oh God, I'm diving back into the ocean of Kickstarter, like just a lot of nerves and like weird feelings. But I've done enough of them now that I feel like, I guess, a little more mentally prepared to cope.
Well, Kickstarter is obviously a nightmare ball of anxiety for the creator, but it's actually super fun for the people who get to back this stuff. And so I want to talk about what cool stuff people can actually get out of the Kickstarter for FOULBROOD. There are a lot of awesome options. So first of all, you offer the actual physical copies or digital. You know, people can get it however they want to. But there are variant covers.
Yeah.
I want to talk about these variant covers because there are some really, really cool ones. So I think my personal favorite, partially because I love these two humans also, is the Rostein and Ted Brandt.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Variant. Oh my God. Yeah. They brought it.
Yeah. I mean, they always do, but
yeah. No, I knew when I asked them, like, I was going to get something really good. So, and yeah, they like busted that out. Like, I just find it amazing that, like, I don't understand how art works. Like, I understand intrinsically how it works, but I don't understand how somebody just like stares at a blank sheet of paper and then imagines, you know, an image and then they make it happen. So yeah, and Ro and Ted, you know, I've been working with them long enough that like I was just like, go do whatever you want. Like, I know it's going to be good. So they didn't disappoint. Like, pretty much everybody who did variants for us, I was just like, yeah, like, as long as it reads as like, I was like, you don't have to put the characters on the cover. You don't, you know, it doesn't have to look like a typical comic cover. I just want it to read like bees and crime, and whatever you want to do with that, that's your, you know, that's your cue, I guess.
Conceptually, the Malachi Ward one is phenomenal. I think this is the first art that I saw for the book, and because I think you released it on Twitter at some point, and it's brilliant. It's literally a bee. It's a bee with the crime scene like strip tied around it.
Yeah, that was just like my brain doesn't work like that. So like I was just so mad. Like, I've been thinking about bees for years now, and like never did my brain manifest like, wouldn't it be cool like having the yellow crime scene tape wrapped around a black like thorax so it looks like a yellow and black bee? Like, I never. But yeah, that's unfortunately I'm just clever enough to ask people who are smart enough to figure that stuff out.
Sometimes that's all it takes, right?
Yeah.
But there are other amazing. They're honestly all amazing. Jonathan Brandon Sawyer has one. Tyler Boss, who is someone we love on this show, and Chris Visions, and they're all super cool. You guys get to choose. You get to choose. I don't know how I'm going to choose, but yeah, you guys get to choose, which is super cool. Everybody's favorite. I think people like Chris, but everybody loves Zola, right?
Sure. Yeah, no,
and
100% agree.
It's a very popular dog.
You can get, all right, everybody's talking about NFTs. Forget about NFTs, okay? You can get an exclusive video of Zola living life. Zola is now a working dog. And
I like that it's an exclusive copy, so you get all the exclusivity of an NFT with none of the grossness associated with that. It's just incredible value.
Exactly.
Really
like if you want a 3-minute video of Zola living life, and you want to just be happy because watching dogs live makes people happy, it's $60, and you get all the other cool stuff. You get the comic. You get both the issue 1 and 2. Super cool. How does it feel to finally like get Zola working?
Great. Like, she has like not contributed to this household financially since she showed up. The closest was when she was in a Mint Mobile ad because of Ryan Reynolds.
What?
Like,
What?
did you guys not catch that one?
No, I missed this somehow.
This was like at the beginning of last year. Ryan Reynolds was like right when he like started doing the Mint Mobile stuff, like when he had just bought it, and then he tweeted about like so it was right around the Super Bowl time, because he tweeted like, oh, I didn't get a Super Bowl commercial, but I bought a full page ad in the New York Times. And for some reason I was there when he posted it, and I quickly replied. I was like, will you do another one with just a big picture of my dog? and then he like, then suddenly I was like DMing with a dude from Mint Mobile. It was like, yeah, send us a good picture of your dog, and then you need to sign this release. Yeah, I've still got so they ran it in the Oregon like, I don't know if it's but then there's a picture of our tweet exchange below.
That's so funny.
It's amazing.
So that's as close to like getting me paid, and I didn't even get paid. Like they gave me like a free like a Mint Mobile thing, like a year of free Mint Mobile.
Okay.
I'll take that.
But I'm on an iPhone, so I don't really know how to take advantage.
Oh no.
So I just have it as like a weird keepsake of like, yeah, this is the time my dog went into business with Ryan Reynolds.
That's a good story.
So yeah, no, I'm been trying to figure out a way to financially exploit my dog, and I found a way to do it that isn't gross.
I mean, it makes sense. She's one of the, on the about page of Two Headed Press, she's listed as one of the two heads. So I feel like she's got to pull her weight a little bit more.
For sure. Yeah. No, she hasn't kicked in on rent or food or anything. So I feel like it's about time that she starts bringing in some cash.
So the pledge level that I think is best, if you are maybe new to Chris but you like the idea of FOULBROOD, or you like Zola, or you're just having fun with this conversation, I think you really want to go with the 3 books, because you're basically getting to choose between 3 of Chris's books that are out now, and you'll get those alongside all the other cool stuff. You'll get and they're signed, which is also awesome. But you'll get the print copies of FOULBROOD 1 and 2, you get the PDFs, and you'll get these signed trades. So you can choose between Crowded, which I frankly recommend everything that's here, but Crowded is tops for me. Heartthrob, which I loved, that was actually the first Chris book I ever read, and I adored it. Short Order Crooks, yours truly, we are also in that, so that's a little bit of incentive. Dead Letters, House 'em Up, Test, which is really cool. Dead Dudes, Pantomime, High Crimes. So you can choose between those. They're all different, and I think that's one of the things that I love about Chris's work. And I think you get whenever I see people talking about you, they always cite the fact that your ideas are special, and they're always different. So I just rattled off all these different books, and they're all completely different stories. Like, maybe they have an essential element in common, like crime, but then it's off the rails,
right?
So yeah, that would be my recommendation if you don't know which one to choose. That's what I would do.
Great.
So yeah, I really think that you guys should check this out, jump on it. Like I said, we'll have a link. You guys will be able to check it out. It's FOULBROOD. I have one last question, because there is the highest pledge tier, $600 or more, is that you can actually get a book co-written with Christopher Sebela. So you said that you've done that before. Two people have already backed at that level. What is that like?
It's a little weird. Like, so the last Kickstarter I did was for the first issue of the Death Defying, this book I'm doing with Gavin Guidry. And I just offered, I was trying to think of like a high dollar item to offer. And yeah, for some reason that just popped into my head. I was like, I'll co-write something with you. Like, and I was just like, well, let's see if this works, if anybody gives a crap. And yeah, a dude bought 2 of them because he wanted to do a 40 issue story. And then somebody else bought one. So the dude who bought 2 of them was this guy, Randy Stone, who we ended up working on this book of his called Eskimo Kisses, which is this sort of horror book that takes place in extremely northern Canada, in a small like sort of Inuit community.
That's interesting.
And it like he got it made, like it came out from Scout Comics as a one shot, like, and it looks really good. Like I wrote it with him. But ultimately the final product is 100% him. And then the other one was a guy who bid on it for me to do a story for this anthology he was putting together, and that turned out really well. That one was less of a co-writer thing than just, he was like, just do whatever you like, here's the theme, like, will you write a script? And I was like, yeah, sure. It's a weird challenge. Like, I have no idea what people who bid on it like want ultimately, but I like the idea of just having something kind of thrown in my lap and like, hey, can you help me make sense of this? Like there's a level of detachment there for me because it's not my thing.
Sure.
So it's an interesting way to write.
Do you think like is it at all similar to like writing, like, obviously you've done work for like Marvel and DC where you're like playing in someone else's sandbox, but that's like still more yours. Like, is it more similar to that, or?
I mean, it's a little like that, but it's not nearly as rigid. Like it's very loosey goosey. Like, because you're just dealing with one, like with another writer. So I have an advantage there because I know what it's like to be a writer and to be like neurotic and terrified. So, yeah, I mean, it's a little like work for hire, but it's also completely different. I don't know. Like I've only done it, those 2 times. So it's not like I'm an expert at it yet. Maybe after this one I will be, but I just think it's an interesting challenge for me. And ideally whoever bids on it, like it's worth, their money, to bring me on board. I don't know if it is, but, hopefully, hopefully I don't screw it up.
I mean, that's really cool. When you said the name Eskimo Kisses, I was like, wow, I feel like I've seen that before. And then I went and looked up the cover and I was like, I've definitely seen this. So that's pretty cool. Like that person got a bump that could launch a career. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I try to keep it super, if they want, like, I'm more than happy to co-write it and they take 100% credit. Like they don't even have to credit me on it. Like, it's kind of a no strings attached deal. If you want to exploit whatever, clout you think my name has, which I don't think it does, but if you do and you want to use it, then go for it. But if you want it and it's 100% yours and my name is not involved at all, that's fine too. And if you sell it as a movie and make a shitload of money, then that's all yours, I guess. And I'll just feel stupid.
Oh man, I love it. Yes. So again, FOULBROOD, check it out. I think you guys are really gonna get a kick out of this. I've been waiting for this for a long time. So if you've never read Chris's work, I think now's a good time to jump on.
Particularly with some of these bundles you can grab.
Yeah, exactly. It's a no-brainer, honestly. If it's Christmas time, if you're looking for something really cool to read over the holiday season, you can back this, get those books. It's just there's no reason not to. I do want to shift gears, and I want to talk about Dirtbag Rapture.
Yes.
Okay? Because and you're gonna have to excuse us because we're about to gush.
All right. I'll take it.
Get ready to receive some honest praise.
Okay. I'm braced.
This book is fun as fuck.
It really is.
It's the most fun, genuine enjoyment that I've had reading a comic in a long time. Obviously, I enjoy reading comics. They're great. I get a lot out of it for a lot of different reasons. But like fun, this is the most fun I've had in a really long time reading a comic book. And one of the things that I loved about it so much is that it feels bold. That's the word that I kept coming back to. It was like, it just didn't feel like you were encumbered on any level when it came to the dialogue. It felt like it was almost like, I don't want to say stream of consciousness because that implies things, but like whatever you thought Kat would say right there, that's just what came out. You know what I'm saying? And that made it feel like anything could be said, that I could turn the page and there'd be something ridiculous and funny and off the cuff. And it was small things too. The demon thing says LMAO. And for some reason, I lost my mind because I just didn't see that coming. And it was moments like that had me on the edge of my seat because I didn't know what was going to happen next. I don't want to spoil too many things. I want people to go read it, but just tell us everything. This is such a fun book. How did you come about it? What's your approach? How's your approach different with this one than anything else? Because it does feel different. Like Kat kind of reminds me of Crowded. In the sense that she kind of has no filter herself, and she kind of says whatever she thinks, but it's different even here. So can you just talk about like how this came about and your process with writing her?
Sure.
And everyone.
It started as a dumb joke on Twitter. I was just part of it wasn't even my conversation. There were a couple comics people having a conversation about, I can't remember what, but eventually it got around to talking about vaping, and then somebody, it was Chris Conroy, who's an editor at DC, made a joke about like Jason Statham like vaping and like the movie that would result. I can't even remember the precise detail, but I remember replying to him like, it's like the Transporter meets the Frighteners. Hit send, and then like 30 seconds later I was like, that's actually a good idea. I was like, how would that work? And that's really like was the genesis of it, was like thinking like, okay, like there's somebody who carries ghosts around, like then why? So I mean, pretty quickly it all, I just kind of sat down and figured out the world and like how Kat's job works, where she can see and talk to ghosts, and when you die you're like stuck within this sort of like tethered, like wherever you die, that's where you're stuck, and you can only like go like several blocks in any direction, but you're kind of trapped there. And I figured out that like, oh, well, Kat can like pick them up and take them somewhere new, like somewhere they want to spend the rest of their lives. And then them being ghosts, they don't have money, so she gets like blackmail information from them for people who are still alive that she can shake money out of.
Awful.
Yeah, and it was just like it came together really easily, and I was super excited about it. And yeah, I mean, it was some books you struggle forever on, but Dirtbag was just kind of like, I mean, I knew it was going to be. I mean, I think once I figured out it was going to be like a stoner, like the cat was like a stoner. I think that really like opened the door for me, because I have a lot of experience being a stoner. So I think that's one reason it was super easy and it kind of flows so easily for me, is that like Cat is probably the closest to like a Mary Sue character that I have in my own books. Like I very much like tapped into a lot of my past experiences to use for this book, and I don't like, and then it became a little more noble. Like I was like, cool, like I'm gonna use this book to like portray a different image of stoners. Like I just didn't want like the basic cliche of stoners is like Cheech and Chong,
Right.
Sure.
or that weird dude from SNL, the goat boy dude. It's just like, yeah, just like and talking about Fish and Grateful Dead and all that horse shit that like I never got into. And I just wanted to represent sort of the other side of fun drug use.
Well, I appreciate it. I felt seen,
Yeah, no, that's what I'm here for. So yeah, and Kat just kind of like just one of those characters that like once I started writing her, she just made sense. And it's a thing where I don't have to think very hard about what she says. Like when you're writing characters, I mean, the sweet spot to get into, as pretentious as it sounds, is where you make them sort of alive enough that like they'll let you know if you're screwing them up, if you're like trying to make them do or say something that like doesn't fit into the character you've established. Ideally, you built them well enough that they'll like sort of turn to you and go like, really, dude, like this isn't what I'd do. And with Kat, yeah, I was there right away. I just sort of knew who she was and how she sounded and how she sort of reacted to the world. And yeah, then from there it was this year, maybe we started I can't remember. Time is so weird for the last 2 years, but
yeah.
I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't, so I had all this extra money that I wasn't spending to go to cons and stuff like that. So I reached out to Kendall Good and I was like, hey, I can't pay you amazingly, but I can pay you to draw the first issue of this thing I want to do, and we'll figure out what we do with it later. Like, I was like, I don't have a plan for this. I don't have a publisher. I just want to make a thing, and I want to make it with you. And luckily he was super into it and on board. And then like right as we finished inks on issue 1 is when I started talking to Oni. And Dirtbag was like top of their list of things that they wanted. So
awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, it came to like it was very effortless. Like which is one of the things that's sort of driving me into Kickstarter stuff a bit more, is like, because we just did Dirtbag under our own steam. Like we didn't wait for anybody to review the pitch, and like we just went out and made it, and we made the book we wanted to make, and we found a publisher that was super into what we were making. So it's very like it rarely works out that well. So Dirtbag feels a little bit blessed.
While we're on that side of the fence, I'm interested in that. Did you, or I guess have you found that it's any easier to pitch a book when you actually have an issue in hand where they can really get a sense of what the kind of voice and style of the book is?
I mean, maybe. You also run the risk that like there's something sexier about a pitch where it's all 100% potential.
Sure.
Which so you can sort of trick publishers into saying yes, because they perceive it as being one thing, and while you have a vision that's 100% different, and then you're basically trying to sneak your vision in while distracting them from turning it into what they want. So yeah, I mean, it can work for you, it can work against you. I think it's ultimately harder because there's no guarantee. Like, you can make a whole issue, you can make a whole series and then take it to a publisher and they're just like, yeah, no, we're not into it, like, good luck. So yeah, I think it just really is sort of based ultimately on like the quality of what you're doing. I mean, I like to flatter myself that like Kendall and I made a really good first issue.
I'm glad you said that, because I wanted to bring that up, actually. I think that's generally something that I find that I think of when I think of what are really your strengths as a writer. I think aside from, like we talked about, having really, really strong, unique ideas and having good follow through on them, I think you do a really good job of that first issue. And I think this is a great example where like it clearly establishes all the rules quickly, but it does it through dialogue and through, internal monologue, so that it doesn't feel like I'm getting just like, here's an info dump about how the world works so that you can follow along from now on, right? It's very much rooted in telling me who Kat is as a character, and that's why it works, because, like, the premise is interesting, and that pitch is interesting enough that I wanted to read the issue. But then you kind of get to that, so what else is here question. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's, I love the main character. She's funny, she's likable, I'm interested in following her on this journey, right? And there's a great, kind of cliffhanger type reveal at the end of the first issue that we won't spoil if you haven't checked it out yet. But, I think for me, I was already in at that point, right? It's like, I don't even really care what the twist is, because I like Kat and I'm interested enough in the world to see, what journey you're trying to take us on. And I think that, like, we talk all the time about how you do an issue number one right, and I think that's the most important thing, is to, not just get the idea over, but get the characters over. And, like, when I think about this book, the thing that stands out the most to me is how much I like the character and the way that she thinks and the way that she talks.
Thanks. Yeah, and I think that's, like, for me, that's 100% the key to making a good book, is like creating a character that feels, real, and even if they're kind of an asshole, like, likable enough or compelling enough that, like, people, because, like, anybody can have a cool idea, like, anybody could have come up with the idea for Dirtbag Rapture, like, it's, it's a cliche, but it's all about execution and really, like, trying to populate this with, like, interesting, compelling characters and, like, a world. I don't know. First issues are super tricky because you have to hook people in while and trying to dance around the info dump is always, like, I'm forever, like, trying to figure out, like, how to do it in a way that's, like, because sometimes it's just unavoidable, but, like, you want to find a way to do it at least that's, like, a bit more clever. Like, Crowded is probably my proudest moment of doing an info dump, like, in issue 2 of that book, where they meet, like, the hacker kids who basically mansplain to Charlie and Vita how Reaper works, and the whole time they're like, dude, we know, but these kids are just, like, on a roll. So, like, calling attention to the info dump, I don't know. So yeah, it's a tricky thing. But I think if you have a character that you believe in and that you have affection for, then I think that comes through on the page, and, like, people who read it will, ideally, a lot of them will have the same feelings.
It's funny because I think you joked about kind of, like, bringing attention to the fact that we're going to, like, contextualize things. And I remember the first bit of internal dialogue that we get in the first issue with Kat. Like, I kind of immediately laughed at the fact that it kind of hits that note of, like, all right, I'm not an asshole, I swear. Like, people say that it's more interesting if you show the blemishes too, right? That you show both sides of yourself. And I immediately was just like, oh, I love that. Like, I love I love that our first interaction with this character is her being a jerk to somebody and then being
Yeah.
like, no, but there's more to me, I swear, you know?
No, I love, I've had a couple friendships in my life where it's very like, like you start off with this person and you can't stand each other. You just like annoy the piss out of each other, but like then you end up becoming like best of friends, and that dynamic still exists of where you're like kind of always needling each other and like shit talking one another, but it's in a so yeah, I don't know, for Kat it just felt like I was like, I'm just gonna start at asshole ground zero and see if I can like make her less assholish by the end of the first issue.
You talk about her feeling like a person, and she makes mistakes. That's something that I think a lot of stories that get told, not just in comics, everywhere, characters don't make mistakes. They're perfectly suited for the world that they're in, and sometimes it just doesn't feel authentic. So I appreciated the authenticity of this story, and I also felt when I was reading Kat, I was like, some of these things remind me of Chris. Like,
yes, some of them reminded me of stories that you've told us on this show.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, like Kat is very much is as close to like a Mary Sue as I've ever written. And the first time I really felt like sort of, I was like, oh fuck it, I'm just gonna dump a lot of myself into Kat and like see what happens.
When you tell stories outside of this one, how often do you feel like I guess it's probably unavoidable, but you can speak to it. How often do you feel that your experiences come into the story, and is it something that you lean into always, or do you kind of try to reel that back to let the characters be whoever they want to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think more I tend to mine my life more for I don't know, experience, like not so much for character stuff, but I mean that stuff is just inevitably going to show up. Like it's, I mean, even if you don't want it to, like because you're writing from your own perspective, and your perspective is shaped by the shit you've gone through. So like it's kind of hard to avoid putting yourself into stuff. It's a tricky balance. Like you don't want to. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to like strip my life for my books. But yeah, I don't know. I think each of us has kind of an infinite amount of experiences to draw from, and you can, and not just our experiences, but like shit that friends have told us, or stuff you see in a movie or a TV show. Like there's just an endless amount of like wells you can sort of drop your bucket into and get something out of. So yeah, I tend not to, I certainly don't look at myself as like a good basis for any sort of character. Kat sort of felt the closest because like she's a stoner and she likes to stay home a lot. I was like, well, that's me. I fucking love to stay home and I love to get high. So like, it just felt, it felt like I don't know. I felt more directly connected to this one because I was like, well, if I had died for 10 minutes and came back seeing ghosts, like this would probably be something I'd get into.
Yeah. I want to. God, I wish I could talk about so many things that happen in the book, but you guys have got to check it out. It's a lot of fun. It's only 3 issues in, so it's not like this huge investment to get on board. It's in stores already, so you can go pick that up. I think you'll have a great time. Like I said, like a lot of comics are very serious, it feels like, and this isn't. But that doesn't mean that there aren't stakes. That doesn't mean that there's not something happening that's like important. There is. It's just that the book doesn't take those things too serious.
Yeah.
I think it's the same reason that like I found Crowded so appealing, is that like it is, there are stakes and it is serious enough that like I feel invested, and it's not like, okay, well, nothing matters, so like what's the reason to follow along, but it's not taking itself so seriously that like you're afraid to have fun, you know? And like that's, you know, comics should be fun at some point, right? Like
yeah. And it's more, you know, like it's just more fun for me. You know, I have to live with these books sometimes for years and years, you know, before they ever come out. And I love, like, you know, when the mood is right for me, I love grim, dark stuff, like
sure,
super serious. But yeah, I just find it hard to turn off when I'm creating. Like I'm just a dude who likes to crack wise, I guess. And like, yeah, for Crowded, like Crowded was more of a group effort, like very much Ro and Ted helped steer that ship more into the direction of being a funnier book than when I originally conceived of it. But yeah, I don't know, maybe I feel like with Dirtbag I kind of let myself lean into it more. So I was like, well, I think I'm actually like good at writing funny stuff, and
definitely.
it felt like a good vehicle for that. So I just kind of, ultimately, like, yeah, there's still going to be stakes and stuff, because I, you know, regardless of readers, I still have to be invested, and like, you know, there's only so much you can write about a character just like dicking around doing nothing, like
right.
before you get bored. So yeah, you have to have, you know, it's like an open world video game. Like you can run around endlessly, but after a while you're going to want to like actually do something to advance the story.
There's I hope this isn't, you know, giving too much away, but there's a like a kind of like a car chase, a very brief car chase that goes down. And it's funny because most of the time in other stories that would have been like, hey, here's the great, you know, like big action set piece. And it's not quite that.
Yeah.
And I didn't care at all. I was like, yeah, I don't even want to necessarily see all that. Like, I want to see the other stuff. And that just goes to show how invested I was by that point in the character, in the story. That wasn't the story. That's just a thing that's happening. I wanted to follow the narrative. And, you know, again, like high praise. That's it's not always like that,
well,
you know?
And to build on that point, Sean, like I love how, you know, the first issue like ends on a cliffhanger basically, and then the second one kind of fakes you out with this like very like, it opens into this very like calm kind of mundane scene, and it's like, oh wait, no, we're still in the middle of the car chase. Like that's like such a fun page, you know? It's a fun way to start the issue, and like, yes, it's still a high stakes action moment, but like there's lots of room for comedy there, and like I super appreciate that, because I think not only does it like make for a different pace, and it's, you know, it's just a good time, it's fun. I think it also helps with what I like about Kat, that like even in a high pressure situation, like she's still cracking jokes, she's still, you know, that same character, because the clarity of who she is and how she deals with situations is so clear, you know. And it's like, yeah, I mean, right, like she's seeing ghosts every day, right? Like it's not, yeah, this is the weirdest thing so far, but it's not, you know,
right.
It's still pretty par for the course for her, I think.
Wow.
Another day in paradise, right?
So screwed up.
Her status quo is screwed up. She can't sleep unless she's on a plane. Like that sucks shit, man. That's tough. Stoners love to sleep.
Yeah, that's the biggest like difference between me and Kat, is I fucking hate flying. But the only time I've ever been able to like fly really well is a friend gave me like a handful of pills before he took me to the airport.
I'll do it.
And I don't even know. I know one of them was something called Milltown, which are like these pills that are like, apparently Milton Berle was popular for, or like helped popularize them. Like this is how old these pills are.
did you take?
I don't know.
What did they like pull it out of their historical like? Oh, I got these and some lewds. You want those? Like,
I would have, yeah, if they had lewds, but this was pretty close. Like I remember, I took them and then like got on the plane, and then the next thing I remember, I was waking up and we were back in Portland. So
that's perfect.
yeah, no, it was the best flight I've ever had.
Well, we could honestly do this all day. We do have to let you go, but I want to pledge here live on the show. I want to pledge to FOULBROOD because I'm excited about this book. I want to support it. I think if you're a fan of comics, there are certain creators that you attach yourself to, that speak to you, that are telling stories that you are invested in. And when that happens, I think it's imperative. And I don't like to tell people how to spend their money, but I think it's imperative that you support, because that's the only way that those creators will get to continue to tell stories. And so if you like it, there's not really a more direct way to support than through this Kickstarter. So that's what I'm going to do here now. I'm actually choosing the variant covers reward level because I need the Ted and Roe variant. And so there I go. I just pledged.
Sweet. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm wishing you all the success in the world.
Watch the ticker go up in real time. We're 422. I think I was number 420, and I feel very proud of that.
You should be. Yeah, donors 69 and 420 should feel
They're the real MVPs.
Yes.
Yeah. Go support it. Kickstarter, FOULBROOD. Is there like a special link type I should be saying, like kickstarter.com/FOULBROOD? Is that
there's like a bit.ly link,
right?
It's just like bit.ly/FOULBROOD.
We'll have a link down in the description as well.
Yeah.
So wherever you're listening to this, go click the link. Go back it right now.
Yeah. If you Google we're the only book called FOULBROOD in the world, I think.
There you go.
Unless it's like a specialized B text.
Are you gonna do a B zine after this, Chris? That's my question.
No. This is my B zine. Like I'm putting all the B info I've gathered is going into this book, and then when I'm done, I'm not gonna think about bees that much anymore.
So before we let you go, I wanted to ask you, are there any books that you're reading right now? Is there anything that you're into that you want to call out?
Trying to think. I mean, like, what's the furthest place from here is like, one of the, I read that. I read it a while ago, but like it's finally out now. I don't know. Matt and Tyler are they're good friends, but also like annoyingly like so talented, especially together. Like it's just frustrating. And Tyler on his own, Tyler's book Dead Dogs Bite, is one of my favorite books that came out, or it was one of my favorite pandemic reads, I guess. Like it's not fair that dude's as talented as he is. Trying to think. Yeah, my reading has been garbage, especially now that my productivity has kind of ticked back up. Like the more productive I get, the less I read.
Sure.
Right.
So I'm trying to think. Like the last few things I picked up at the shop were Crisis Zone, the Simon Hanselman book, who does Meg, Mog, and Owl. But they did this book called Crisis Zone through the pandemic, and it is maybe like one of the best summaries of like what it felt like to live through like 2020 and 2021.
Interesting.
It's just this group of degenerates like trapped in a house together, and like all this shit that was like they were just making it on Instagram. So it's really hard to describe, but like there's weird like it's like people with thong collections and like Animal Crossing and like weird OnlyFans anal porn, and like and then there's a riot and a fire, and it just came out like collected in this thick volume. It's It's one of the funniest things I've ever read. Besides that, I am finishing up Nod Away Volume 2 by Joshua Cotter, who, if you don't know him, is like, he's like one of the unsung geniuses making comics right now. Like he's yeah, I can't say enough good stuff about Josh Cotter. Like just like crushing it, and should be a superstar. So pretty much anytime I can tell people to go read Not Away, I'll say that.
Well, I'm gonna have to check it out.
If you have time, Chris, I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
So all these years ago, right, we asked you what were the ideas that are cooking in the back of your head right now. You know, obviously now we see FOULBROOD. What's the thing that's cooking in the back of your brain right now that we're gonna read in 4 years?
Yeah, I got a bunch of I just finished up I'm finishing up a first issue of this. I have a bunch of space stuff coming.
Okay.
But this is my newest space thing, and it's I'm trying, like, you know that movie War of the Roses?
Yeah.
Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner is like this battling this married couple that's basically fighting it out to the death. I'm doing kind of a version of that, except it's set in on like an Elon Muskian planet of like these like settlers who are basically like working for a giant corporation, like trying to settle and habitate a planet.
Okay.
And,
that sounds fascinating.
And they basically are like falling out of love as it happens, and it turns into, and they're like trapped together in space.
It's horrifying.
Yeah, no, it's it's a lot of fun for me. I don't know how much fun it'll be to read. Like, it's just the first issue, which I'm super happy about. And then I'm doing this mother-daughter magic book that sort of involves the anarchist cookbook.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't say much more than that. I have like, trying to think of if there's anything like really, like those two are the ones that are really kind of like burning a hole in my head right now of trying to figure out, like, now that I've written them, I was like, well, who the hell's going to put, like, the first issue of that mother-daughter thing is like 44 pages, so I don't know where that might be a thing that we wind up kickstarting down the road, but I don't know. Yeah, I think that's as solid an answer as I got for you, but I'm hoping both of those will, I don't know. I really believe in both of these, so I just have to figure out who's going to be dumb enough to say yes to them.
Well, I think you might actually be the house of ideas, because
I'm at least an apartment of ideas.
The townhouse of ideas.
Yes,
working your way up. Next time we talk to you, you'll be a house of ideas.
The tiny house of ideas.
We've got to do this more often, because I feel like we could keep talking forever.
I love talking with you guys. So yeah, whenever you want me on, I just have to set an alarm, because I'm not used to getting up this early. But
I know it's that 3 hour difference. Is there anything that you want to leave the people with? Any, your Twitter, your Instagram, if you have it, all that good stuff?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram as xtop, XTOP. But otherwise, my website is ChristopherSebela.com, and I'm going to be updating that this weekend. Not that you'll really be able to tell, but I at least have a very detailed bibliography on there, so you can scan through and see all my single issues, and when they in chronological order. It's very pleasing to my OCD, if nothing else. But yeah, I think I did join. I am on TikTok, but I don't understand it because I'm fucking old and decrepit now. So
can relate.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm on there under a fake name, so I'm not really gonna, like, I don't know what I'm doing with it, but I'm on there
testing the waters. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for joining us. Make sure you guys check out the Foul Brood Kickstarter. This is a book worth backing, so give that a go. And yeah, we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.
We hope you had a good time listening to that conversation with Chris. He's awesome. You know, we love having him on. So like I can't recommend the Kickstarter enough. We'll have a link, like we said. Just go check it out. It's gonna be fun.
It's impossible that every one of you has checked out Chris's work, I would imagine, unless you listen to everything we say, which you should. Go check it out, right? Like, we have historically loved his work. So if you're a new reader and, you know, maybe like you don't want to go back a Kickstarter book that you can't get your hands on right now, go pick up Crowded or something and read that first. And if that's for you, then I'm sure this will be too.
Yeah, exactly. But we've got a lot more show to do. We're going to be talking about, some unfortunate news for IDW, maybe some unfortunate news for Dark Horse even. But we've got a new comic book company joining the fray, which should be interesting. And in our main topic, we're going to be talking about all the spider madness that I'm sure you guys have heard some amount of rumblings about. So we've got a lot to talk about. Before we get into that, we do want to we want to get to your comments. So we've got some listener comments here. Pete, why don't you take it away?
This first one comes from Kilgore Trout, who wrote in on episode 266, specifically about the story we discussed with Luke Cage, City on Fire, getting canceled. So Kilgore wrote in and said, not only would Marvel not interrupt the Immortal Hulk run to fire Joe Bennett, but the new Kate's Hulk #1 had a Joe Bennett variant that came out because they already paid for it. I mean, holy crap. They're being so blatant in this regard. I think you hit the nail on the head 100%.
So what I had said was that I felt the reason that Marvel was choosing to cancel the book instead of saying it was delayed or putting it out digitally if it was a print issue, because obviously we understand there are a lot of print issues going on right now, is that the subject matter of the book is very rooted in what America has been like for the last couple of years. You know, the book starts with a Black person being killed by cops, if I remember correctly. So there's all these racially charged elements that I can see Marvel not necessarily wanting to put out right now, especially because we just had the Rittenhouse case go south and, you know, all this other stuff. This book is actually a tie-in to Devil's Reign, which is the Marvel event that's starting this week, actually.
Oh.
So it's not even like it's a throwaway comic that they don't give a shit about. They can't put it out at another time. Like, it's rooted in this event. So if it doesn't come out now, it won't be relevant to, it won't make any sense. You know, like if they put it out after the event's over, what the hell am I reading this for? So I had said that I felt it was because of that. And I guess Kilgore agreed. I did read as a small follow-up, Bleeding Cool reported that, I think it was Bleeding Cool, that actually, no, it wasn't. It was Newsarama, that they heard it was a scheduling issue, that it wasn't outright canceled. But the creator himself was told it was canceled. So who do you believe? I don't know.
Yeah. Because, I mean, you also think about it, right? Like what Newsarama said there was like, well, this is what we've heard, right? So, you know, that's always a thing that I feel like people sometimes lose in the conversation when you're talking about reporting on rumors and some of these kinds of things, is like, just because someone heard something doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah.
And just because something was reported doesn't mean a news outlet is claiming that that's fact, right? Like, that's what they heard from a source that they have, right?
Exactly.
Obviously, the writer is going to have a different experience, and you can make all kinds of tinfoil hat conversations about why a writer might want to portray something in one way or another. It's hard to say, you know, and ultimately you need to just look at all of the information and kind of like sift through it yourself and see what you think until we get more information.
Yeah, exactly.
If we do.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily anticipate that we will. It could be entirely true that Marvel really didn't cancel it. But the fact is we don't know. And until we do know, my inclination is to believe that there's something wrong with why, like there's a reason behind why they canceled it. That's not what they're saying. And Kilgore here pointing out the Joe Bennett variant. I didn't even know about that. I brought up the thing about them not firing Joe Bennett from Immortal Hulk because they didn't want to interrupt the run. This is work that was paid for, that's been done. And I brought up DC published almost all of the 5G shit.
Right.
Like they've reworked all of it to put it out. So are you kidding me? But like I went into that rant last week. So thank you for writing in, Kilgore, a loyal, very loyal listener.
Yeah. Thanks again, Kilgore. These next two come from MBM 1260 on our Hulk #1 review. So their first comment said, a banner-driven Hulk was explored in Peter David's awful, massively overrated run. Aaron developed Hulk's character. This is a step backwards. Then they followed up to say the awful Shield Hulk run was by Mark Waid.
Okay, so that's harsh language. I haven't personally read Peter David's run, I don't believe. Aaron's run was very good, and I was mistaken. It was Waid who had the Hulk in like a suit of armor. I don't know if you saw that, Pete, ever, but
not that I remember.
I'm not commenting on the quality of the actual story, but seeing the Hulk in armor to me is completely ridiculous. I don't understand what reason the Hulk would ever have to wear armor outside of the Planet Hulk stuff, which was more about like it was more like war, like what's the word I'm looking for? It was like war gear. Like he was wearing it in like tribal, like that's what they wore, Yeah. He was a gladiator.
Yeah, right. I was gonna say that feels more like out of like solidarity with the group he's a part of rather than that he actually needed fucking body armor, right?
Yeah.
My man does not need body armor.
No.
And like, I don't know, like it might be cool to see in certain, like that looks cool, the gladiator armor, right? It's very striking. It's very like out of character for what the Hulk looks like. So when you see that, you immediately think of Planet Hulk, and like there's something to be said for that, But yeah, the idea of him in like some kind of like tech suit has always felt kind of silly, because it's like, how fucking long is that gonna last on him?
That was something we said in the review.
Yeah.
And in the new
I missed that one.
Donny Cates, the new Donny Cates run, Hulk is in armor, and Tyler and I we did that one together. My immediate reaction was like, this is silly. Like what? And there's a whole reason. We don't have to get into it, but it just didn't work for me. I didn't like it. So thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it.
This next one comes from Langston Brown on the King of Spies #1 review, and they wrote in and said, hey, what do you guys think are some of Mark Millar's better books?
It's a great question, Langston.
I guess it's time for a random question of the week!
Go ahead, because I know you've read some Mark stuff too, right? So
Yeah. I mean, like, I guess when you're talking about like historically, I think the one that always comes to mind for me is Kick-Ass, of course. But also Superman Red Sun is obviously, pretty well remembered. It's a book I really enjoyed as a teenager. I think the thing that I end up coming back to, though, when I think about Mark Millar is a lot of the stories that I really fuck with from Mark Millar are books I have historically fucked with and not read in a really long time. So I don't know how much some of them hold up, like, to my sensibilities now, but when I was like a teenager, he was one of my guys, like I was really into, the Ultimate Universe, and he did a lot of work over there with like Ultimate Fantastic Four. And I think he did was it the second or third volume of Ultimates? Maybe. I don't think he did the first one, but, and obviously he worked on
the Ultimates.
Yeah. I don't remember.
He did all of that.
Oh, he was the whole run with him? Okay. I thought somebody else started that one and then he jumped on. There was maybe another book that he did that with. Ultimates
1 and 2 were him. Ultimates 3, if I'm, it was been a while. I think Ultimates 3 was Jeff Loeb.
Okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking. Is the reverse, is that he kicked it off and then passed the baton. But yeah, I mean, he's worked on a lot of stuff in that era that like definitely was formative stuff for me when I was a teenager and getting back into Marvel. And Kick-Ass was one of, if not the first non-Big Two comic I remember reading that wasn't like some licensed thing, you know? Like Kick-Ass was definitely the book that got me on the road toward reading like Invincible and Walking Dead and, you know, like Irredeemable and Incorruptible, because I remember reading that story and loving the idea of it being, you know, a superhero story that was outside of continuity and that it was set in the real world and it was edgy and it was very like, you know, it had some real kind of like that era humor and like some grim dark kind of nature to it that me at 16 was very, very turned on by, you know, or even maybe even younger than that now that I think about it. But I remember Kick-Ass being the first comic that I ever collected the entire thing of, and like it had already come out afterwards, so like I was hunting down the issues like in prime condition, and I remember being 17 and finding Kick-Ass 1 at a comic book store, and they wouldn't sell it to me because I wasn't 18, but my friend who was with me was, and I was like, yo dog, like you gotta buy this comic for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, Kick-Ass, like I kind of fell off after the first one.
Yeah, Kick-Ass 2 and 3 didn't really do it for me.
Yeah, but I think the first one was special. It was novel. You know, it was just cool. And I think Mark Millar really captured what kind of cool was for comics at the time.
Sure.
Like Pete laid out. Strangely, looking through his bibliography, I guess he wrote Sonic comics for a while, which is really random.
Really?
Sonic the Hedgehog. Yeah,
I had no idea.
Yeah, for me, and I think this is something that you have to keep in mind when you read Mark Millar stuff. You come to a Mark Millar book almost as much for his writing as whatever artist he's working with, because I don't think there's a writer in comics who has worked with more of the top A++ artists than Mark has. So when I talk about Mark Millar, I think about the artists as well. So like Empress was great, and that's with Stuart Immonen. Perfect. Sure. I love that book. So good. Huck with Raphael Albuquerque.
Oh, I forgot about Huck. I read that in like 2014 or 15 or whatever. I have not thought about that book in a while.
Huck was awesome.
Where's the Huck
Nemesis
movie?
That would be, Netflix. That'd be great.
Right?
Yeah. Nemesis with Steve McNiven. Nemesis I really liked. It's not necessarily like at the top of my list for Mark, but the Steve McNiven art is, because that's like my favorite guy. So yeah. And then Jupiter's Legacy is cool. Reborn is great with Capullo. That's not that old either. That's from that resolved in 2017.
Oh,
Reborn was amazing.
Fuck, I also loved the Marvel Knights Spider-Man with Terry Dodson on art. Ooh, I loved that book as a teenager. That was like, that's another one I have the whole run of.
There you go.
And I bought it, I think, like years after it came out. Yeah.
I gotta check that out.
Yeah, that shit is good. I mean, obviously, Civil War, right?
Yeah, you know, that's my favorite. Like, and that's why I was so hyped for Nemesis, was because it was Millar and McNiven teaming up again. So
yeah,
you know, it's really cool. The last book I just wanted to shout out is Magic Order. I think it's underrated. It's with Olivier Coipel. It's brilliant. It's like Mark compared it to like a cross between The Sopranos and Harry Potter, which sounds fucking crazy. And it's not quite the extreme of either, but it is. I see why he says that.
Yeah,
so,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
When you think about it, for sure.
Somehow, yeah.
Yeah, he's funny for me because he's definitely a creator who like is responsible for a lot of stuff that I really deeply connected with at a certain point in my life and was very, very important on my journey to being the fan I am today, for sure. But I don't always think of him in that way. You know, I think he has similar like Bendis energy in my mind sometimes, I think, which I don't think is fair, because he's definitely done plenty of books that I haven't connected with as much, and some of that stuff I don't, ages to varying degrees, but yeah, I mean, Mark is one of those names for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. And so hopefully we gave you something to think about, Langston. If you are trying to get on board with him, now's a great time to do that, considering the holidays. He's got a lot of great books. But thank you for writing in. Another person who writes in quite a bit.
This next one comes from Bolo Johnson. Great name. Who wrote in and said, I think that there's missing a word here.
Read it as it is.
Okay, I'll read it as is. We'll stop doing Spawn stories dirty. I get it. You don't like the news page, but like it or not, it is a staple of Spawn, as well as Spawn personality and powers compared to other Spawns.
Okay.
You take this one.
Let me break this down. So we reviewed last week Spawn, I think it was
235, I think?
234, 235. It was. And Pete, I gotta tell you, you would have enjoyed this issue.
Really? It was that good?
Best issue of Spawn that has come out since we started. Do you want to know why? It was written by Rory McConville, who's doing Time Before Time.
Got it.
So it was legitimately good. It wasn't like, I really want to like this, but it was good.
Okay.
And we praised it. Everybody.
Rory's great. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. We all praised it. So this individual, this Spawn sycophant, decides to write in on the most glowingly complimentary issue of Spawn that we reviewed and pick at the one negative that I had, which was that I am tired, sick to death of the damn news pages. And I've only been reading Spawn since the summer. If you've been reading Spawn since issue 1, and this has been a staple since then, you need your head examined if you're not tired of that too. It's enough. It's enough. I don't need that shit. So I'm not saying that you, Bolo Johnson, can't be annoyed by the fact that I keep pointing it out. But what I can tell you is that this podcast just so happens to be mine alongside with the rest of the pals. And I can come on here and say whatever I want. And so, because of that fact, I will continue to criticize Spawn when the news pages suck. And it's every time. So I guess it's going to be every time that I complain. I'm sorry. If Todd McFarlane gets to include it every month, I get to complain about it every fucking month.
I love the increasingly contentious relationship we're building with Spawn readers. Because, this person has clearly listened to multiple reviews of ours. Because they're like, will you stop doing Spawn dirty? And it's hilarious to me because, we just keep complaining about the book. And these folks are gluttons for punishment, So,
yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Bolo, if that's where you're at, that's fair. Right? I'm glad that Spawn's for you and that you're digging it. But, we got to call it like we sees it. And just because something is a staple, doesn't mean that it's above critique,
But what's funny too is that I like Spawn. So you're writing in criticize. Well, maybe criticizing is a little bit too far, but you're commenting on my critique of the book when I've been the guy. I'm the guy.
Down.
If it wasn't for me, we probably wouldn't review Spawn.
Yes.
So
that is true.
And by the way, these Spawn fans are gluttons for punishment on two levels. They're gluttons for punishment because they keep listening to our reviews, and then also because they keep reading the damn book.
It's true.
Which I include myself among because I will not stop reading Spawn.
You're a glutton. You're a glutton for punishment, man.
We know that. I read Marvel comics constantly. So all I'm saying, Bolo, is I have no beef with you. We're cool. But if you will continue to listen to our reviews, that's cool. But you got to accept that I'm going to criticize it. I'm sorry. It's not perfect. Like, it is what it is, dude.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And that's cool. You're free to disagree. But Sean will roast you. So
yeah, that's just part of it. Well, hopefully you don't take offense. Maybe you didn't even hear me. I don't know. Maybe you only listen to us when we review Spawn.
That would be even funnier. Anyway, yeah. Obviously, we mean no beef, no harm. we're just having fun, Bolo. All right, this next one comes from definitely not Sean Soapbox, who wrote in and said, "I'm thankful for Sean, Pete, Marco, and Phil, but mostly Sean." You twice, Kale 0 times.
First of all, it's unfortunate that the mystery of who definitely not Sean Soapbox is will not be resolved this year because no one has figured it out. But you are my favorite listener. You're great. Thank you so much. I'm thankful for you. Definitely not. And it's nice. It's nice to be appreciated. It really is. For you to be thankful for me, I'm thankful for you. How about that?
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for the mystery, you know? I don't want to know at this point. I feel like it keeps some of the intrigue of life, you know, alive for me.
Fair enough.
To not know all the answers.
Maybe I'll reveal it. Maybe I'll reveal it on episode 300. Who knows?
There we go.
Thank you all for writing in. We really appreciate it. If you guys want to do what they did, you can write to us in a variety of ways. All of these people chose to reach out to us on YouTube. So if you guys want to do that as well, subscribe to our channel because it helps. And we're trying to get to 500 subscribers. That's a milestone, and it would help us out a ton just for stuff over there. So, you know, please do that. And while you're there, you can leave us a comment or thecommicspals@gmail.com or social media, wherever you feel like talking to us, we will find it. So let's do the pals pulls. Pete, you chose Inferno number 3.
Yep. Inferno, you know, I don't really have much more to say about it, just to, like, you should be reading it, right? If you've enjoyed the Hickman X-Men run, like I have, wearing the shirt today, very appropriate.
That's awesome.
It's Make More Mutants, baby. This is, I think, what's been missing from the ongoings, right? Is like there was so much political intrigue and this sense of mystery and theorizing and you know, all of that, all the stuff that goes along with a Hickman run, right, or event, was what was so special about House and Powers, and we got glimpses of that throughout, you know, Hickman's X-Men stuff and some of the other surrounding books. But I think by and large, it's fair to say that the monthly ongoing books have often failed to live up to the promise of Krakoa, or have at least been in the shadow of how exceptional the heights of it are versus, you know, the valleys, right?
Yeah.
This is one of those peaks. This is one of those books that you must read. And if you've not read any of the other stuff that's gone on in Krakoa, you'll still get something out of this, because I think it's friendly enough as a follow-up to House and Powers that you could just pick this up and get into it. So if you dug those books, if you've been on the train like we have to varying degrees, you must be reading this book, because it's the reward for the investment that you've made. So Inferno number 3.
I shouted this out on Thursday, so I'm not going to go into it too much on our Thursday reviews, which we will be reviewing Inferno number 3. If you want to hear that, you've got to listen to our reviews for Marvel and DC and everything else, which drops every single Thursday. So tune in for that. It's great stuff. You also went with Swamp Thing 10.
Yep, Swamp Thing, one of our favorite books of the year. Great creative team there with Ron V, Mike Perkins, and Mike Spicer. Just really phenomenal work I think, from stem to stern, right? That book has been really, really good. And with very rare exception, it's often been my pick of the week or my favorite book of the week, or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
I think the book is great. This is the end of oh no, wait, did season 1 get extended, or is this the end of season 1?
Season 1 got, well, they extended the run, but I don't like the messaging is so off. I think this is the end of the arc.
And so then we have the break.
1 is resolving.
Yes.
Then we have the break, and then it continues with issue 11,
right?
Which I guess is season 2.
Yeah. So it's a little confusing about the numbering and everything, but this is the end of this first arc, which has been great. And there is also the trade paperback coming out this week as well. So supply issues notwithstanding, hopefully you can get it. But if you've missed the ride, if you've heard us talk about it and you've been interested in it, or maybe you're becoming aware of Ram V as his star is on the rise, check it out. I really, really highly recommend this book. And I say that as a prior to this, a very, very casual fan of Swamp Thing, having only checked out the stuff we did for the book club last year or 2 years ago, whatever it was. Time's meaningless now. This book is great. You should be checking it out. It's one of my favorites of the year.
Made in Korea #6.
This is my favorite book of the year. I really, really enjoy this book. We've both gone to bat for it time and time again. We reviewed every issue on our Image reviews. So if you've been following along over there, this book is phenomenal. I think it's got a fantastic creative team. Specifically, Jeremy Holt doing amazing job, I think, with the scripts. The book is really emotionally resonant, and I think that's the thing that sticks out to me the most. It's definitely been a really exciting ride, because issue to issue there's been a lot of really cool world building and some really exciting developments. But I think the thing that makes this book stand out to me as the one that I think is my favorite of the year is just because it's got a really strong emotional core, and it's smartly written. So I highly recommend this book to everybody. I know the last 2 issues that we reviewed, Sean, we both were really over the moon about those. Even though we thought the first 3 were phenomenal, like, I think the last couple have been insane, and this is the end of the first arc. So, great time to jump on the book if you've missed it this far. Do not sleep on it.
Yeah. I want to point out 2 Batman books this week. Batman 89, #4. This has low-key been phenomenal. I know that when we reviewed it, I was high on the first issue and the other guys were kind of down. I have stuck along with it, even though we stopped reviewing it for the show. I think it's fantastic. I so wish, if this is the idea that they had for what the third movie would have been for Tim Burton, I'm so sad that we didn't get it, because this is so cool. It's just it's such an expansion on what Burton was doing in a way that opens the world up. Like even getting Robin, getting Two-Face, like all these things. It's so cool. It's such a shame how those movies pivoted. I know they're now, like, it's almost kind of cool to like the Schumacher movies, but I really wish we had gotten this. This has been great. So I'm all in on it. It's awesome. And then also go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it is a shame.
Yeah. And then Batman #118. This is actually Joshua Williamson's first issue. This is the start of his mini run with Jorge Molina. I'm excited because I think Joshua Williamson is great. Sorry. I think Josh is great, and his work on Robin's been fantastic. His Flash run is one of my all-time favorite runs on a character. I never cared about the Flash. So I'm interested in what he's going to do with Batman. I wish it was a longer run. We know this is kind of a stopgap. He's like just coming in to fill the time, which is kind of a bummer. But he'll make something of it, I'm sure. So I'm into it.
Yeah, and you got to hope that this being an at bat with like a bigger character like this, if it does well, if it's popular, maybe they think, okay, cool, let's throw him something else, of this caliber.
Right, or maybe Batman again down the road. Who knows?
Yeah, right. Maybe he'll get a full run of his own. Because wasn't this what happened with Tinian, where he was supposed to come on as like a stopgap, and then they extended the run because it was so popular.
Yep.
So maybe that'll be similar situation here.
Yeah. Who knows? I'm looking forward to it no matter what it's going to be. So we'll see. Let's jump into the news. This is a weird one. We've got a new challenger entering the fray of comic book publishers. This one is called Zest World, if you can believe that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, well, they're starting off strong. They've got an article in the New York Times, and it's written by George Jean Gustins.
That's probably right.
And it's essentially a subscription-based platform that is going to kind of be like an answer to Substack in a way, where creators are getting paid, a lot of them in advance, at least this initial crop, I'll get to who they are in a moment, to tell the stories they feel like telling. And that's really it. Like, it's not complicated. They are one of the investors is the guy behind Reddit, one of the guys behind Reddit. So that's pretty cool. Alexis Ohanian. And apparently he's a lifelong comic fan. So we talked about that a little bit in the interview. He said, I'm a lifelong comics fan, so much so that I didn't read an actual book for pleasure until college. This investment started from a place of personal passion, but it's also a perfect fit with my investing history in the creator economy. So as far as the creators involved, go ahead.
It's interesting. No, keep going. Sorry.
Right. So we've got, and this is just up front, this is the initial team, Eric Canet, Amanda Connor, and Jimmy Palmiotti. Of course, they are the husband and wife duo that people associate a lot with Harley Quinn, and Jonah Hex. Phil Jimenez, who we just sung the praises of amazingly on Wonder Woman Historia, which just dropped last week. Alex Segura and Peter Tomasi. Also, they announced they made the first kind of book announcement. The thing that they're kind of selling this on to us is The Awakened, which is a superhero murder mystery that Alex Segura is going to write with Michael Morecci, whose name they didn't include in the initial announcement. So I'm guessing Morecci is kind of being brought into the mix by Segura to work on this book.
Yeah.
And Dean Kotz is doing the art.
Because I'm getting the impression, I guess, that these are the folks they've made the deal with, and then they can collaborate with whoever they want.
Right. Yep. This is interesting. And I don't want to denigrate any of the creators here. I've read several of their work and have enjoyed it. I think they're all talented. But when you look at what is happening over at Substack and the creators that they were able to get, you're talking about Scott Snyder, you're talking about Donny Cates, you're talking about Jonathan Hickman, right? Mm-hmm. And a whole host of other creators. Those are people who are kind of like anchors in comics. Their existence in comics helps sustain comics. The industry is not the same if Scott Snyder's not in it. Think about what that did for Comixology. Hit their deal with him. Yeah. That helped get Substack over having those creators involved.
It's like a legitimizer, right. It makes them look serious.
Right. And I don't know if this crop of creators includes the person or people that are going to make this legit. You know, Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor are great, but, you know, Palmiotti has been on Twitter vocally, honestly, talking about the lack of success that he has had on Kickstarter and kind of wondering where the fan base is. So if that's an issue for you now, what's going to happen with this unproven idea of a subscription-based thing where I'm paying sight unseen for these stories that are from creators who I'm not necessarily checking for?
I think that there's something to be said there, but I guess it depends on how things kind of go from here, right? Because like there might be right now, because you have this kind of new angle to the comic book industry and the market like emerging, right? Like, and I don't feel like it's just this, right? Like I think this is speaking to a broader trend of companies, organizations, and whatever, all seeing that there's money to be made in digital comics.
Yeah.
And wanting to get a piece of that pie. And I think when I look at this, I think that there's an argument to be made, because I don't disagree with anything that you're saying on its face, but I think it doesn't necessarily need to be as successful as like a Substack or something like that, at least on the onset, to be valuable or to be worthwhile. Sure. Because I think what I am trying to equate this to on some level in my mind is like, look at, you know, some of the like the crops of smaller independent publishers that have come up over the last several, you know, years. And at the end of the day, if this is another avenue for creators to get a deal like this where they can make books that they're excited about, that ideally raise their star power on some level, that ideally helps turn Zest World into a, you know, a platform or a publisher or whatever shape it ends up taking, right? As a viable way for creators to get paid making comics, then ultimately that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And not everyone is gonna be the top dog, right? But look at any industry. You have your top dog, you have your number twos, and you've got all of the other folks who get in line behind that. Some of them are imitators who fall away, and some of them are able to develop a niche that fulfills an angle of the market that the other bigger dogs maybe aren't, and that's enough, you know? And I think when you have someone like Alexis Ohanian behind it, right, who, if what we've read from him is to be believed, right, that he's like a diehard comics person and he loves comics and he's rich, right? He's, you know, he's a pretty well-known like investor of this type.
Sure.
I mean, how much money does it need to make up front, right? Like, are they entering this with the startup mindset of we won't make money in the first year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever? If that's built into their plan and they believe in this, or he loves comics so much that he wants to put his foot in the door and get involved and be able to facilitate work, you know, like, you know, that's not sustainable forever, but it might be sustainable long enough to attract some other higher tier talent that they might be in conversations with right now, that might be thinking, do I go here? Do I go Substack? Do I do this? Whatever. Like, you never know, right? Like it only takes one breakout book or a big get of a creator who, you know, pulls those huge headlines to get more folks interested in it, right? But like, obviously, they've got an article in the New York Times, like they've got some momentum, they've got some press attention, they've got, you know, one of the founders of Reddit who can leverage, you know, his capital and influence to try to put this over. And, you know, I think whether or not this is successful is, you know, we'll see. I am very personally emboldened to see more and more stuff like this cropping up, because I think that this could really be a thing that's healthy for the industry in the long term, to have more, Substacks, Comixology original type options where you have avenues where creators can go and make art that they're passionate about, that they can control the stake in to some degree, or to all of the degree, in this case of Substack and this, right, ideally. That's only a good thing, and even if this goes belly up, all these creators get to make some pretty cool books that they'll own. So there's at least that.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And again, like it's not, I'm not interested in tearing any of them down. I think this is awesome for them. They got paid. That's fantastic. Palmiotti did say they put their money where their mouth was. They came to us and said, you guys can do whatever you want. We want you guys to create some comics and characters. You guys own them. You guys control them. Nothing's being done without sitting with us and talking to us, and nothing is being made without it benefiting us. It's the kind of transparency all creators need. That's great.
Yeah.
And there's kind of the article talks a little bit about how the sort of like the problem statement. Chris Giliberti says he's the CEO of Zest World, that basically there's a problem with creators getting paid for when a book becomes a film, when it gets optioned for TV, whatever, that creators aren't reaping the benefits, and that's absolutely true. So if any of these creators do something that pops, the fact that, okay, hey, I made The Awakened, right? And now it's going to be a movie put out by Universal, I'm going to really reap the benefits. I'm going to see my fair share of that. That's great. That's all we want. So I'm hopeful for that. I just have some concerns because there's not infinite money.
Shit, you know what, though? This is interesting. In addition to working with Reddit, Ohanian was one of the first investors in Patreon.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, you're right. Like, it's not infinite, but stuff like this is so interesting because, like, it might come out and be nothing, but if one of these books pops or something like that, like, and the attention's there, that's all it takes, really, to get things moving, know? And they have more money to burn than none. So, like, let's see, right? Like, you got to think too, right? There's so many overhead costs associated with comics that are just not a problem with digital distribution. So, like, if all they have to do is pay to make the books and make the content, like, hopefully they can make a pretty sizable investment in building a library before that cash burn becomes a problem.
I'll be interested to see if these stories don't ever come physical. I feel like they probably will, but who knows?
I feel like it'll be similar to the Substack equation where they will come out, but it won't be from Zest World. Yeah, it'll be like Image does it, or Dark Horse, or some other entity jumps
Speaking
in on
of
that.
Dark Horse, Dark Horse is looking for a buyer, according to Bloomberg. They are weighing their options, which could include a sale. It's unfortunate, and like, I guess that doesn't have to be bad. That's not an inherently bad thing that a company is looking to sell if they feel like it's valuable and whatever. Like, great, I guess. Obviously, Dark Horse has had some hits. Umbrella Academy is a big deal with a Netflix show and stuff like that. They've got the Star Wars license, which is really weird. Like, elements of the Star Wars license are moving to Dark Horse when Disney owns Marvel. I don't get that at all.
Yeah.
But whatever. So Dark Horse has value for sure. It's a bummer that it could be sold and potentially end up in the hands of people that don't like understand why Dark Horse works
or don't care about comics.
Don't care about comics. There's a risk in the industry right now of a big company coming over and say, hey, we're going to buy you because we just want the IP. Mm-hmm. Just like Millar World. Now, Mark Millar's obviously able to do what he wants on the comics end of things, but he doesn't necessarily control what happens when Netflix decides they want to make Jupiter's Legacy, or
I think he's still involved though, because like
he's involved.
Because they bought Millar World, but he still is active in Millar World. So like it's interesting because like I think Netflix is an example of how it can kind of go right, where like, and arguably right, like because the adaptions haven't been super successful, and there's an argument to be made that maybe that's not good. But I think in that sense, it feels more collaborative. Right? Where like Netflix is like, we want to invest in you as a creator, Mark Millar. Yeah. So we're going to buy your company and finance the comics so that we can adapt stuff because we see value in that. Right? But I think like what you're talking about, it could be very, very simple that like a major multimedia corporation comes in and buys Dark Horse and then is like, cool, we want the IP. We don't really care about that whole comics thing though.
Right.
That's not impossible by any stretch of the imagination. Will it happen? Probably not. But I don't know.
I'm worried. I don't necessarily have a ton more to say about it, but I am worried. Dark Horse is they may not be the big two, they're not the big three, they might not even be the big four, although I would argue they're probably the fourth. Maybe Boom is, whatever. My point is that without Dark Horse, without that space, that avenue, we never get Hellboy, we never get Sin City, we don't get Umbrella Academy. There's so many things that don't happen if Dark Horse doesn't exist.
Yeah, we
need those alternatives. Like Boom is great, Image is great. They all have different flavors, and the flavor of Dark Horse is something that people want. So hopefully if they do end up selling, we don't lose that identity that they have.
Yeah, it's unfortunate too, because I know in the comicbook.com article they kind of call out how Umbrella Academy was successful at Netflix, and obviously there's the Star Wars thing that you brought up, and like both of those are things that like they equate to being like, oh, like maybe we could see Netflix or the Walt Disney Company buy them, and like I'm sure those conversations are happening. I'm sure that there's that consideration being made. Either of those acquisitions would be something I would be like, in general, I would not like to see Dark Horse acquired, but I think that would be even worse because, like Phil and I are always the ones who squeal about this, I feel like the most, but media consolidation is scary, kids. Like we don't need Disney to then own, okay, cool, great. Now we own Dark Horse. So now we went from owning like 50% of the comic book industry to 60%. Like,
yeah,
that's not good. We don't need that. We don't want that.
Yeah, agreed. So speaking of, media consolidation, it looks like IDW is losing some of that. They are going to be losing, according to Bleeding Cool, the licenses for G.I. Joe and Transformers. They've had both of those licenses for a very, very long time. I think since I started reading comics.
I think
says I'm seeing here IDW got Transformers in 2005.
Yes.
So that's right around the time I started reading comics. So they've done a lot of good stuff with Transformers in the comic space. I feel like those books and the G.I. Joe ones, frankly, have been successes. We've talked about them on the show in the past.
They've had G.I. Joe since 2008.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I know that a big piece of what IDW does is these like media franchises that they get to make comics for, because they also did Sonic and a couple others I can't think of right now. But
yeah,
that's a big part of their brand. So I don't know what IDW is if they lose, like from a financial perspective, I guess, if they lose these two presumably cash cows. Like how many freaking GI Joe comics do they publish in a given month? Like I every time I see the IDW release schedule, it's a ton of GI Joe, ton of Transformers. If those are not on the docket, what do you fill that with?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, shit, right? Like I was going to their Wikipedia page to try and see like what are the non-licensed properties they have that are like bigger. And the last sentence of the top of their Wikipedia article is, the company is perhaps best known for its licensed comic book adaptations of movies, television shows, video games, and cartoons, right? Like that's really, that is definitely kind of their bread and butter, not to say that they don't have other creator-owned stuff, because of course they do.
Yeah.
And they do have a lot of other big properties. Like they are still the home of like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, for example. So, I don't think that's, this is obviously a big loss for them, but I don't know that it means like that IDW is like necessarily in trouble, but it's definitely got to be something that's going to hurt their bottom line in a pretty big way.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not a good look. They lost some of their Marvel stuff. They lost the Star Wars All Ages stuff. So I don't know what's happening. I really don't. It feels like they've lost. That's 4 major properties we just talked about.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's happening because, like, are those unrelated stories that are just happening at the same time, and it's like unfortunate timing for IDW, or does this speak to some level of, like corporate disorganization or something like that that's led to them having, multiple relationships with, these other companies that have gone sour, I think right now it feels like that's probably that feels like a little too tinfoil hat for me to be like, yes, this is what's happening. But if this happens again, then I would be like, okay, that feels like less of a coincidence and more of a pattern. Because like obviously the Star Wars stuff, we talked about that. That feels weird still because they didn't even just take it back for themselves. They took it back and then they're like, okay, we'll let Dark Horse do it, which is like why. Right. Maybe they had a better deal, whatever. Like who knows? Both of these properties are owned by the same parent company, so it's, again, like, it could just be that they're going in a different direction, that they're making a new deal, and, like, in the same way that the Sonic comics were at Dark Horse for forever, and then they moved over to IDW. It could just be that they feel like it's time for a change, for whatever reason, But if we see another one of these big properties that they have their hands on, get moved around, I would definitely be more open to the idea that like maybe there's something going on at IDW that's just not good.
Yeah. Hoping for the best for IDW for sure. But we are going to switch gears and get into our main topic, which is all about Spider-Man. We have a lot to discuss. There's some big Spider-Man news that dropped this week. It's funny that Pete and I are the ones on this show because we are of course, the 2 biggest Spider-Man fans on this podcast, uniquely positioned to have this conversation. Screw the rest of those guys. It's Spider time.
I don't need to hear Kale talk about how he doesn't care about this. Fuck him.
Agreed. Do you want to break or?
I already got to break before, so I'm good. If you want to break, right. I'm fine. Yeah, but we keep rolling.
I'm good. I'm good to go.
Let's do it.
All right. So I'm just gonna say what the headline is, and then we're gonna go right into it.
Okay.
Hollywood Reporter. This is their headline: Marvel and Sony planning more Spider-Man beyond No Way Home, says producer Amy Pascal. Stop.
End of the story. That's it.
I'm going to say that last part again. Says producer Amy Pascal. If you know me, if you listen to this show and you've heard my Spider-Man rants, you know one thing. Amy Pascal is not to be trusted. This is the person, this is the same woman who told the media during the promotion for Venom that there was a possibility that it could take place in the MCU. She said that the Sonyverse and the MCU were going to cross over. Remember the face of Kevin Feige, the face of Feige. Remember, it was a meme. It was all over the place. That face was made because of comments that Pascal was making about the relationship between Sony and Marvel, making it seem like their movies, Sony's movies, were Marvel movies. And it wasn't true. It just wasn't true. It was a lie. It was a total lie. So she is saying, now that I have given you that, she is saying that Spider-Man 4, 5, and 6 are coming, and that they will come from Marvel. At the same time that Amy Pascal is saying that, this is the quote, I'm going to read it. This is not the last movie that we are going to make with Marvel. This is not the last Spider-Man movie. We are getting ready to make the next Spider-Man movie with Tom Holland and Marvel. We're thinking of this as 3 films, and now we're going on to the next 3. This is not the last of our MCU movies. Okay. At the exact same time that she is saying that, Tom Holland is saying he might be done. I got that quote too.
Yeah.
So he said, if I'm playing Spider-Man after I'm 30, I've done something wrong. Maybe it is time for me to move on. Maybe what's best for Spider-Man is that they do a Miles Morales film. So Tom Holland is a what? Like he's like 20.
He's 25.
25. Okay. If they do a trilogy of movies, right, which they can't start today, 3 movies will take about, I don't know, let's say about a decade. Around a decade, a little less than that. You could get it because Captain America First Avenger came out in like what, 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
And the third, well, actually that was.
I mean, you could even look at the Spider-Man movies, right? Like, I mean,
yeah.
He's been in 3 after this one, and the first one was what, 2017?
Really?
Was it? I'm looking it up right now.
You might be. Yeah, you're probably right. Okay, so maybe it's not a decade. So that's 4 years.
Yeah, Homecoming was 2017, Far From Home was 19, and then No Way Home's 2021. So if we were doing a trilogy on the same timeline, it would theoretically take 6 years. So he'd probably be finishing the last movie when he was 30. So he could mean that, where he's like, after that, I'm done. Because I've been playing the character for a huge chunk of my life. We've done 2 trilogies. At that point, it would be overkill, right?
Right.
Maybe.
Okay, fair enough. So maybe he's kind of trolling a little bit. Maybe he knew what was going on or whatever. I don't trust Amy Pascal as far as she could throw a sandwich at me. Which of course is a reference to her throwing a sandwich at Kevin Feige's face. I'm way too into all this stuff.
The lore. Y'all don't know the lore about Amy Pascal's feud.
Believe me, there is a video in me that never saw the light of day that like is all about this stuff. I purged myself, but because you guys never saw it, I still like feel these things. But I think Kevin Feige sat at home reading this article with that same face. Because if it's true, he don't want to take the heat off of No Way Home. You don't want people to be thinking about what's coming ahead of the movie you're about to watch. You want them to be thinking about the movie you're about to watch.
Right.
It's perfectly rational. If it's not true, if they're still deliberating, or if, whatever like reason why it just might not be inked, you don't want to talk about it because it's not a done deal. What if they talk about this and then it ends up not coming to fruition because of whatever reason? Sony and Marvel, like, don't think that this is a happy marriage. Please.
They're staying together for the kid.
100%. 100%.
So my, not even like counterpoint to that, but I guess like to build on that.
Sure.
The motivation behind Amy Pascal's statements could be to put pressure on that, because remember the last negotiation, right? Like, how did that play out? There was the whole dialogue about, like Sony is so greedy and they don't want to play ball and everybody loves Spider-Man in the MCU and they're the reason that it can't happen because they're backing out of the deal. And obviously there was, that was the narrative, whether that was the truth or not, that was how fans perceived it. I wonder if this is Amy in some way trying to get ahead of that and being like, oh, we're definitely going to do this. So then if Disney doesn't want to play hardball, then they can be like, well, we already, we said we wanted to do more. They don't want to do it. They don't want to, you know what I mean? Like, it could be a little bit of that corporate 3D chess going on by getting the fans whipped up to be like, oh, there's another trilogy coming. Awesome.
You just made the exact opposite point I was about to make, and I'll explain what I mean. I think you're right that it's 3D chess. I think, though, that because when this went down originally, when they broke up, it was Sony that had basically, they put out a person wrote an article. I feel like it was Deadline, could be wrong. That person who wrote the article was in the pocket of Sony. I'm not making this up. You can read it for yourself. The language of the article suggested that it was Disney who was playing hardball, that Disney wanted more money, that Disney wanted a bigger cut, and then they actually came out and said that Kevin Feige was too busy working on Star Wars.
I remember that.
Right. So I think this is Sony once again being Cersei Lannister and putting Marvel Disney, Marvel, whatever, in a very weird position. Mm-hmm. Kevin Feige is notoriously quiet about things. Kevin Feige is not the kind of person to go and talk about things that are cooking. If it's not ready to be talked about, you don't talk about it. You guys remember Kevin Tsujihara from Warner Brothers did an interview where he was just talking flippantly about several projects that didn't even have a single person attached. He was talking about Batgirl. He was talking about Static. He was talking about all this stuff, and none of it had anybody attached, right? That's not the Kevin Feige way. Kevin Feige, you can't even get Kevin Feige to talk about the Fantastic Four casually. So this is the difference in what we're talking about. So I agree with your point that it could be the 3D chess, but it could also be Amy Pascal being who she is and just talking because she can't help herself. Yeah.
And I mean, and it might be both, is the other thing too, right? Like, I think it's funny because this is such a weird situation because, like, you have this story, and it's reported on by legitimate, Hollywood Reporter. You can usually take one of their reports to the bank, right? Yeah. But given who's involved, I wouldn't be surprised if a few weeks from now it's like, oh, Trouble in Paradise again, and they're arguing and negotiations and blah, blah, blah. And then it all ends up coming out in the wash, and these movies happen anyway, right? And whether it's a Tom Holland trilogy or a Miles Morales trilogy or whatever, I have a feeling that it's not the last of Spider-Man in the MCU. But it's just a matter of, like, I guess where the dust settles from now, because if Tom Holland is down to do another 3, I would be surprised if they wouldn't commit to doing another 3 movies about Peter Parker. They've done so much work in the, like, he's a teenager and all this stuff, and he's taking, he's stepping into Iron Man's shoes and all these things. And like, if they've got another 3 movies where he can be one of the leading, men of the MCU, and then he dies, and then Miles comes in when he's in his 30s, and we've been watching him be Spider-Man for forever, that will, why wouldn't you want to do that, right? Like, that will have more weight, I think, than killing him when he's, in universe, he's 18. Like, I don't know. That feels like a little bit maybe, they could still have their cake and eat it too. And make $6 billion Spider-Man movies instead of 3,
if the relationship stays strong.
Right, exactly.
And what is frustrating about this, as No Way Home is projected to make $200 million opening weekend, which is massive.
Yeah.
What's frustrating is that Spider-Man is the only character in all the Marvel movies whose future in Marvel movies is always in question.
Yeah. If
they sign a new deal, does that mean we get Avengers movies with Spider-Man in them? He should be in them. He is an Avenger, Like, I'm not saying that I care less about Spider-Man if he's not present. I'm saying I care less about the Avengers if he's not present. At this point, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
It's frustrating how it feels like it's always a struggle with this character who is a blockbuster character. And it's like, Sony makes money either way.
Yeah.
They make money either way. So let's just get past all that and just do what the fans want. And my hope with all of this is that after the Far From Home debacle, they have learned that they got to put the money first and the fans first. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
you're good. Sony can't make good Spider-Man movies.
No.
I hate to say that because I think the original, not the whole trilogy.
2 out of 3.
And actually, I wanted to talk to you about this. I'm rewatching all the Spider-Man movies.
Oh.
Yeah. So I did the first 2 so far.
Okay.
And I think I like the first one more than the second one now, which is crazy. But
they're like so neck and neck. I feel like they both really have a lot going for them. They're just different, right? Like, but like, one is such a good fucking, it's so tight, right? Like, if that was the only Spider-Man movie they ever made, it'd be like, yeah, you nailed it. Good enough. Like,
and I think, regardless of which one you think is better, it's pretty safe to say that of the Sony made Spider-Man movies, only the first 2 are like pretty universally critically
they're well remembered.
Yeah, the third one obviously was just DOA, and Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. There was too much behind the scenes.
They get a bad rap,
they're better than people want to say they are.
Yes,
but there are some problems, and a lot of those problems are due to the same person we're talking about, Amy Pascal, and certain other people who needed to put their stamp on those movies more than they wanted them to be good.
Yeah. Well, and I think to your point, right? Like, Sony makes money either way, and I feel like they've found a formula that works for them, right? Where like you let Marvel handle the actual proper Spider-Man movies, and then you can do all these like spin-offs and whatever, right? Because like, it sucks because I want Spider-Man in the MCU. I agree with you that I don't think Sony's capable of making good live-action superhero movies. I think Venom was good by accident. I thought Venom 2 was really, really underwhelming, and I'm not looking forward to Morbius. But Sony owning the Spider-Man IP is the reason we got what I maintain is the best Spider-Man movie made, which is Into the Spider-Verse. And that movie is so special because they were able to take the Spider-Man IP and give it to auteurs in Miller and Lord and let them do something that was like dynamic and interesting and different and fresh and groundbreaking when it comes to like a big blockbuster animated feature, right? Disney wouldn't have done that. Disney wouldn't have taken that risk. They wouldn't have made that movie because there's no reason for them to make that movie, right? They have their Marvel machine, and if they're going to make animated Marvel projects, they go in their own specific boxes that feed into other initiatives and all these other things, right? So if we can move forward and this is the status quo where we get good MCU Spider-Man movies, bad spin-off Sony movies, and dope animated movies, then like, yeah, let's ride that ride for 10 more years. That's okay. I can live with that. You know, I wish they would fucking stop making those spin-off movies and let those characters be in the MCU movies. That would be great, but you know.
I completely agree with everything you just said. I think you're right that like there are aspects of Sony still kind of being the owners of the character on film that are beneficial. Like you mentioned, Into the Spider-Verse. I'm so happy for all the kids that got to be kids while that movie came out. That's amazing.
Yeah. And that movie was huge for Miles as a character in terms of putting him over in like the general like pop culture lexicon rather than just being a thing that like comic book readers knew and liked.
Yeah, absolutely. My thing is like, what are the concessions that Marvel will have to make in order to keep playing with Spider-Man? Is that going to mean that they're going to have to let Tom Holland's Spider-Man appear in Venom 3?
Maybe.
Do they have to allow Venom to appear in a Spider-Man movie? I don't think that will happen because I think Sony is too smart for that. This is what I know. This is from the contract and stuff like that. This is what I know. If Marvel uses a character that Sony owns, that except for Spider-Man, that exact same version is on ice. Marvel has them. So that's why we have MJ, but her actual name is not Mary Jane. It's something else.
Yeah.
That's why Norman Osborn is not here. That's why so many of these characters have not appeared because of what I just said. So,
which is interesting because they're about to do that now.
They are about to do that, but I'm not sure how that works because those characters, those versions of the characters,
are the Sony
already exist.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, if it's that granular, Alfred Molina's Doc Ock is on ice. You know what I'm saying? But they don't care about that because that character is dead and gone after this movie, presumably.
Yeah. Well, and Alfred Molina is like 70 years old, so he probably won't do this again. You know?
Exactly. On top of that, it's not like Sony's going to be making a Doc Ock movie. Presumably. That would be just insane, right? Like, that makes no sense at all. But then again, there's a Morbius movie coming out next year. So
there's 2 Venom movies that have nothing to do with Spider-Man, which makes no sense, and I maintain that to this fucking day.
I agree, even though I liked the first one.
Yeah, the first one was fun because by accident. Like that movie, I maintain that it is accidentally good because I don't know, man. They gotta stop with this shit. I really hope that Morbius like fucking flops at the box office and they're like, all right, fuck it, and they just are like, okay, here you go, like. But
that's the thing, and that's another, and we do have to wrap up, but like I want to tug on that. That's another like negative consequence of them renewing the deal. Sony is not giving up the Spider-Man bag. They have to make Spider-Man universe movies. They just do.
Yeah.
And so no matter how many flop, no matter what people say about them, they're going to keep doing it. So that's 10 more years, maybe 6 by your count, maybe a little more of those movies.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
But
it
I
sure
mean,
does.
They've already fucking like Venom's fucked. So if they keep making those for a while, that's okay. I'm not going to see them. I'm not going to see any more of those if I can help it. Morbius, fuck that shit and whatever. Like, who cares about Morbius anyway? Like, that's not the worst thing in the world. It's when they start getting to the Black Cats and like the characters that I actually give a fuck about, where I'm gonna be like, please stop. Like, just stop doing this. I mean, I do care about Venom, but I've already taken that blow, right? Like, that's already it is what it is, I guess. But
yeah, I think that we're in for a hell of a ride. They're gonna get into there was the Madam Web rumor. They're gonna get into Spider Woman. They're gonna get into Black Cat. They're gonna get into Silver Sable. Like just Silver and Black.
Please
it's
don't.
It's gonna happen. And I wonder what the future of Miles is. Are they really gonna hold Miles off for 10 years? I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think there's any way they hold Miles off for 10 years.
I don't know, though, because it's like if you've got Spider-Verse, right, and like you've got other ways that you can leverage the character and like make people clamor for it, like maybe, like I don't know. It's hard to say because it's like Miles is like super. He's a hot character. Like he's underutilized, I think, in the broader pop culture spectrum. But like, I don't know, right? Like they also haven't done a lot of the big beats that you can do with Peter Parker. And like, do they not want to do those things? I don't know, right? Like they've spent all this time building him up. He's already that A tier, S tier character, right? Like, do you want to start with an origin all over again and go through that? Like, but while you haven't even gotten to do some of these other things that you've set up, right? Of him being a leader in the broader superhero community, or him growing into the Spider-Man that we know him to be historically, you know, rather than like the kid who's still figuring it out.
Yeah. Well, I'm suggesting Sony might leverage Miles.
Oh, I get what you're saying. Okay. I think I would argue that they already are leveraging Miles well with the Spider-Verse stuff, and they've got like, what, 3 Spider-Verse sequels planned, right? Like, and a spinoff. So maybe that's enough, you know?
Yeah, fair enough.
Because those, I think, would probably, there'd be an argument like, are those things cannibalizing each other on some level? Maybe not, because they're different mediums, but like you already have a Miles Morales trilogy. Do we need a second one?
We'll see. I used the phrase earlier, Spider Madness, as a bit of a joke, but it really is like madness between Sony and Marvel. And if Amy Pascal is to be believed, we're in for another trilogy's worth of all the stuff we just talked about. And my biggest hope is that it will be a smoother experience as fans than the first go round, because, there was there were some scary times.
Yeah.
So I hope for the best. I love Spider-Man. Pete does too. We're excited for No Way Home. Can't wait to see it and review it for you guys. But hopefully after that, we get some clarity about the situation. And I'll tell you this is my last word. Don't believe anything at all that you hear or anything at all that you see unless Kevin Feige says it. He doesn't. The only time he lies to us is when it's to protect a
hype moment.
Yeah, which I'm cool with that.
Yeah,
but when it's business, if it's about the relationship between Sony and Marvel, believe what Kevin Feige says and no one else.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm not sold on this news until I hear it come out of Kevin Feige's mouth.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Absolutely.
And I think all of that will be in a much clearer light on the other end of No Way Home, right?
Exactly.
Because, there's some pretty big ways that could swerve that would make some of these things very complicated. Yep. So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Sound off on your thoughts. If you're a Spider-Man fan, let us know your thoughts about everything we just talked about. Are you excited? Were you able to get tickets during Spider-Man Day last Monday, or did you go through the hell that was AMC Theaters and Fandango's websites? I did. I got tickets for Thursday. Super hyped. It took a really long time. That was a mission. Share your horror stories with us, or talk about anything. Back Christopher Sebela's Kickstarter, FOULBROOD, a link to which is in the description of this very podcast that you are currently listening to. Thank you so much for joining us. We absolutely always appreciate the write-ins, the subscribes. All that stuff helps us out so much, and it shows us that you care about us, and we care about you back. Let's do some plugs. Pete.
Thank you guys for joining us here on another episode of the Comics Pals. If you want to connect with me, I'm at @loud_Pete on Twitter and Instagram. You can go check out some more stuff from me, my band, Long Friend, Time Friend. We're good if you like noisy punk rock. We've got some shows coming up in Philly that I am really looking forward to. So if you're local and you want to come out, go follow me on social media, and I'm posting about them and stuff. So yeah, come check us out. And then you can also head over to flipscreen.games. That's a website, and it's got links to the video game podcast I do. So check it out.
Awesome. As for me, I'm on Twitter and Instagram only at Sean Soapbox. If you want to trade war stories about what it was like to get Spider-Man No Way Home tickets, I'm in for that. Or frankly, anything that you're into. Right now, I feel like there's so much cool stuff going on, video game wise, comics wise. Just a great time to be a nerd. Never been a better time, in fact. So that's it for us. Thank you so much for listening. Until next week, we're the Comics Pals signing off. Take care, guys.
See you next week.